So I welcome you then for this discussion, and first of all, many congratulations for getting a very awesome rank in the forest
Thank you, sir.
services.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much.
Yeah. So how's the feeling as of now? Excited? Happy?
So more than happy, I believe I am more satisfied because it is after 3.5, 4 long years that I found my name on the list.
Right. Right. Must be very satisfying now that ये अगली बारी अभी कुछ plan है next time फिर UPSC देने का?
Sir, सिर्फ IAS के लिए एक बार है, just for that specific service.
Right.
But apart from that,
sorted. थोड़ा relieved अब sorted.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
Great. So tell me something about yourself, Udayan. Like you come from which city and what have you done in your graduation?
So I am from Bhopal, Madhya Pradesh.
Oh, awesome. And city of lakes.
Yes, sir.
Right.
So, and then I did my bachelor's in technology, BTech, from Indian Institute of Engineering, Science and Technology, Shibpur, which is in Howrah, West Bengal.
Right. So
post that, in 2018, I graduated from there, and then I joined an MNC known as PricewaterhouseCoopers,
right,
PwC.
Right.
So I worked there as a consultant for around a year.
Right.
And since 2019 end, I believe I am solely preparing for the civil services and the Indian Forest Services exam.
You come from a technical background and you've done your graduation from a very good college as well. You were working with PwC, which is a very top-notch consulting company. What was your motivation for civil services? Why civil services? Was that your own choice? Or was that कि चलो parents ने कहा peer pressure etc. etc.
Sir, not my parents, because specifically my father is also an IFoS officer.
Okay.
So him being a civil servant, I have always seen his life since my childhood. The respect he gets, the amount of the type of work that he does, that has always inspired me. And also while working in an MNC, I felt that I could do much more for the society because whatever I was doing there was for the profit of the company. But in the civil services or per se any government services, I do believe there is a element of public service or doing something for the society directly. So these are the two things that motivated me.
So what's your age, Udayan, as of now?
So I'm currently 25 years old.
25. So at a very young age. So I suppose you're from Generation Z. Generation Z. I mean, millennials are 96 and 97 and beyond a Generation Z.
Sir, I'm 97 born.
97 born. The reason I asked you that why, because I believe Generation Z and जो आजकल के जो like बच्चे हैं वो काफी ज़्यादा they want to actually question everything. They want to actually find out that why should we do this thing, why should we do that thing. So I mean, would you also suggest to people who will be watching this video of yours to actually explore the why of why they want to pursue UPSC, because there are so many options nowadays?
Yes, sir, definitely. There are excellent options in the corporate as well as in research line as well. There are many of my friends who are pursuing PhD and higher studies. So there are ample of opportunities, but what I do feel is that we have to find a purpose, like something that we enter into at this age we'll be doing for like next 35 years or so.
Absolutely.
So we have to find the purpose, because work to will again be, despite being in the civil service, I know the work will be of repetitive nature after a few years. But it's the bigger picture or the greater purpose, I think, that should, if your job fulfills that for you, then I think that career choice is a good thing for him or her.
Right. IFoS, which means that आपका prelims में तो बहुत अच्छा स्कोर रहा होगा, और prelims आज के टाइम पे अगर एक IAS ऑफिसर को लिखना पड़ जाए जो कि 10 साल 12 साल पहले का IAS ऑफिसर है, वो भी फेल हो जाएगा, हाथ उसके भी हाथ खड़े हो जाएंगे आपके prelims के सामने. तो आपकी क्या स्ट्रैटेजी रही है और आपका ये मतलब have you been able to successfully clear prelims back to back?
Yes, sir. In all my attempts, I have cleared the prelims. This was my fourth. The 23 attempt was my fourth attempt. So even in this CSE prelims, I have cleared both IFoS and CSE both.
अरे बाप रे बाप. तो मतलब आपने इस बार भी prelims अच्छा, because इस बार तो prelims काफी difficult आया था. So
yes, sir.
What is the secret sauce for Udayan to clear prelims back to back 4 times in a row?
Sir, first of all, I would like to say that for clearing prelims, there is a misconception that current affairs must be focused. Yes, it must be focused. But for clearing prelims nowadays, I do feel that there must be a solid command on the static part. Because static part का ही ultimately current affair में भी अगर कुछ है, polity में let's say defamation या फिर कोई ऐसा incident चल रहा है, सो अगेन उसका स्टैटिक पार्ट ही जनरली पूछा जाता है, कभी पॉलिटिकल न्यूज या फिर वैसा डेटा पॉइंट से लेकर जनरली आता नहीं है इन प्रीलिम्स. सो आई डू फील having command over subjects like polity, economy, especially environment, because in prelims I think if we take a rough idea, around 40-45 questions are from environment and economy, and some overlap with geography because geography and environment also overlap. So in तीन subjects से अगर geography का जो sole physical geography है that तो आजकल weightage कम हो चुका है, but जो applied geography part है, human geography and environment specially, I think environment and economics play that significant role to clear IFS cutoff, because polity Lakshmikant everyone does and more or less अगर 12 क्वेश्चन है तो you can't afford मतलब losing more than 2 questions. 10 तो सही होने चाहिए पॉलिटी में, बट वो एनवायरमेंट डिसाइडिंग फैक्टर हो जाता है इकोनॉमिक्स, बिकॉज उसमें करंट एंड काफी वेटेज उसका ज्यादा है, बिकॉज आई डू फील 45 क्वेश्चंस आर ओनली फ्रॉम दीज टू टॉपिक्स. सो आई थिंक कमांड ओवर स्टैटिक पार्ट एंड फोकसिंग ऑन दीज टू थिंग्स, एंड मोर ओवर in the last few years weightage of art and culture has also increased, because 4 साल पहले if I would have to ask some of my seniors, they told me यार इतना cost benefit ratio उतना अच्छा नहीं है, तो you have to give in more and the output will be less,
right?
but पिछले 3-4 साल से अगर हम लोग ट्रेंड देखें, even in mains around 40-45 मार्क्स का पूरा आर्ट एंड कल्चर से आ रहा है in GS1. so मेरे ख्याल से उस पार्ट पर भी स्टूडेंट्स एंड कैंडिडेट्स नीड टू फोकस,
right? So when did you hear about sleepy classes for the first time? And sleepy classes, was it of any benefit to you in course of your preparation?
Yes sir, definitely. I do follow the regular daily current affairs videos or multiple topic issues that were uploaded on the sleepy classes portals on the YouTube channel. So I came across this institution through my YouTube feed, and then I somehow regularly followed this. Like in the weekends I used to watch 4 or 5 videos of different issues that were uploaded, the videos that were uploaded.
Right.
So, yes.
So, what were your sources for geology and anthropology?
So, for my anthropology for CSE, my main sources were Vaid sir's note. I took coaching from Vaid sir, NK Vaid sir.
Right.
So, the materials that he referred, his class notes as well as some for paper 2 Tribal India part, we have a book by Nadeem Hasnain sir.
Right.
So those portions I covered from there. And for Indian Forest Services, we have to take 2 science optional. So I have to switch to completely 2 new optional in the gap of those 50 days between the 2 mains. So I took geology and forestry there. For geology, I took a crash course of a coaching named Planet Geology. And it was of 21 days. It just gave me the basic overview, but that course was extremely helpful for me. Because in a limited amount of time, I had to cover the syllabus of 4 years. So how to eliminate those topics which I won't be able to read, how to selectively read topics from previous year questions. So that course helped me a lot. And for forestry, I did self-study for my second optional. Yes, sir.
So what are your sources for forestry? Some notes or some books which you're studying?
So my main source was Manikandan and Prabhu. There is a book by Manikandan and Prabhu. Okay. So that was my single source. It's like a 1200 page book.
Right.
And that is sufficient enough to clear the mains. I believe so.
Right.
And for geology, I relied on Planet Geology's class notes.
Right.
And there are 2 books. One is KM Bangar sir's book, and one is PK Mukherjee sir's book. So these 3 were my main sources for geology.
All right. Now, coming to the GS part of UPSC, of civil services.
Yes, sir.
So, what has been your strategy for GS 1, 2, 3, 4? And since you'll be giving mains this time around as well, you'll giving mains for both, for forest as well as for civil services. So, particularly for civil services, what is your, strategy for the 4 papers?
Sir, so for GS1, I do think that again the prelims part that we focus on, like the modern India and some portions of art and culture, medieval history, that is sufficient enough, because 3 months ago अभी prelims हुआ था, तो उसके लिए बहुत ज़्यादा revision करना नहीं पड़ता. But for GS1, there are other special topics like society and some overlapping topics of GS2 like social justice, women, vulnerable sections, and some parts of geography. So I think GS1 is more or less static apart from the society part, in which I think case studies or few examples needs to be given for every point that you write. it can be a one-liner example, I believe. It can be a large case study through which one can explain all the points.
Right.
There are multiple ways of representing through case studies, because in topics of society, I do think case studies are very important.
Right, absolutely.
More than diagrams, but case studies could be more attractive points for society per se topic.
Right.
And for GS2, I think again my sources were limited to current affairs, like the monthly magazines of coachings. Apart from that, Lakshmikant, and I had made some. So since I have been preparing for like last 3 years, I have my own handwritten notes as well,
Right.
for many static topics.
Right.
So I keep on adding on them, value adding every year. So that becomes my primary source for GS2.
Right.
Similarly for international relations in GS2 as well.
Right.
So this goes for GS2. For GS3, I think economic survey is very important to cover. Apart from that, budget also give us some pointers to write on the way forward or what the government is doing. Apart from the topics like environment, I think again is a very dynamic and current thing. For topic like environment, I do refer to some magazine like the Down to Earth.
Down to Earth, right.
It's a monthly
That's a good
magazine.
magazine. Yes.
I don't read cover to cover, but few articles which I find important, I do read them from either from the website or from the PDF.
Right.
So Down to Earth magazine I follow. Apart from that, being a science graduate, I think the current affairs of science are covered through the newspapers, but the
Right.
static part, if they come, I think I'm comfortable enough to answer them.
Answer.
Paper for GS3.
Right.
So for GS4 is what even I am finding it difficult to complete GS4, because in all of my last 3 attempts, I have never been able to complete my entire paper. In my last attempt, there was a 10 marker question which I was not able to attempt.
Mm-hmm.
So GS4 ke liye, I think there must be a specific strategy about how to go for the case studies, because we do tend to find in the recent years that case studies are more or less similar. The content becomes more or less similar for all of the case studies. So I think it's better to do the case studies at the end rather than in the beginning, because for the last 3 years, what I was doing is attempting the case studies first, and that took me around 1 hour 45 minutes, 1 hour 50 minutes. And then it becomes very difficult to attempt 130 marks of this part, the theory part of ethics. And for content, I think I refer to Wajiram's class notes. Apart from that, I followed lexicon for ethics. And again, case studies are again an important part in ethics paper as well.
Right, right. How important for you is answer writing? Answer writing and getting the answers evaluated. Do you think that that's very important? That's quite integral in order to get a good rank? That gives a sense of satisfaction?
Yes, sir. So more than evaluation, I think it's the part that we are writing the answers. So it's the answer writing which is very important. It may be possible that your answers, if you don't have time or you don't have enough money to get a paper evaluated,
right,
or by a test series, but still I do think that answer writing plays a very important role, because in most of the online sources we could everywhere find the model answer keys for almost all the tests that are there in the market, or we can purchase it from the market as well, physical copies. So we could tally our own answers from those model answer keys, but I think practicing, मतलब वो पेन चलाना, that part is very important, because speed का ही at the end paper है. एक time आता है जब content तो हो जाता है, but वो speed पे खत्म होना and quality answer उस time पर 5-10 मिनट में सोच के deliver करना, that becomes the greatest challenge in mains, I think.
Right. So, I mean, what has been your drawback as far as UPSC mains is concerned? Is the time an issue? Timing का issue है कि complete नहीं कर पा रहे paper अपना?
Sir, in ethics paper, timing has been my issue, and I like, मतलब थोड़ा मेरा marks anthropology में I think I could increase by like 30 marks more.
Okay.
There is a huge scope of me improving in anthropology.
Right.
So anthropology part में yes, और ethics के paper में थोड़ा, ये दो paper में मेरा है, because in essay I have been getting around 130-135 marks है, essay में आ रहे हर बार.
Awesome.
और GS 1, 2, 3 में भी more or less 100 के आसपास, 100 से थोड़ा ऊपर, थोड़ा नीचे, वैसे ही, मतलब it's average or more than average.
Right.
And I think that is sufficient enough to clear mains. Average भी अगर हो जाए तो 100 के around, तो that becomes good. But ethics में I think I need to work upon, and on the anthropology part also.
All right. That also brings me to another question, Udayan, which is essay. Now, you scored 130 in your essay. Essay is often quite ignored. So, I am a teacher of essay. I teach essay. I teach IR and internal security also on sleepy classes. Essay भी एक subject है जो मैं पढ़ाता हूँ. And I personally feel that 250 marks का essay है. And that can be your make it and break it kind of a moment. And many people, they tend to ignore essay because either number one, they're very overconfident कि we have done our schooling from a very prestigious background, हमारी English अच्छी है, and other type of student would be जिनको लगता है कि यार कि ऐसे में तो कोई बात नहीं, बाद में practice कर लेंगे कि चलो बातें ही लिखनी है. So what is your approach specifically in a time when UPSC is asking philosophical topics?
Sir, so for essay, I didn't took any help from any institution or coaching. So firstly, I was fortunate enough to go to a decent schooling. So I thought my English is good enough to write an essay. But it was mainly how to organize my thoughts. That portion was the initial difficulty that I faced. So I talked with my senior who is in the Indian Administrative Service of 2020 batch.
Right.
And he gave me a like, मतलब वो मंत्रा बोला उन्होंने कि कैसे 3 घंटे को डिवाइड करना है. 130 मतलब 1 hour 30 minutes का एक ऐसे है, 30 minutes पूरा brainstorming, and even in those 30 minutes he gave me like 5 मिनट में सिर्फ जो रैंडम पॉइंट्स आ रहे दिमाग में बस लिखो उस टॉपिक पर. आफ्टर दैट नेक्स्ट 5 minutes में सिर्फ डेटा और कोट्स अगर कुछ दिमाग में आ रहे हैं, राइट देम डाउन इन अ रफ स्पीड. In the next 5 minutes, write the body, write like the flow of the body. How will be your flow? In the last 10 minutes, think about a good conclusion and introduction, and then start writing. So I followed this rule. So this was my thumb rule for every essay that I wrote.
Right.
And मतलब मैंने essay का ऐसा कोई practice नहीं किया था because I didn't give any mock test for essay as well.
Right.
But in my first attempt, I scored in essay 136. So after that, I thought कि जैसा मैं कर रहा हूँ बस उतना ही करूँ तो I think that's good enough.
Right.
So I followed that strategy. I started with that strategy, and even today I follow that only.
Right. And approach towards philosophical topic. Do you think philosophical topic requires a lot of philosophy to be read, or do you think it's a very specific approach which is specific to the philosophical topic?
Sir, for philosophical topics, I think for understanding the thought of the question, what the question demands, we need to have some idea about philosophy. And that we could get through our ethics paper as well.
Right.
उतना समझ में आ जाता है ethics जब पढ़ते हैं, that उतना portion philosophy का समझ में आ जाता है जो question demand कर रहा है. But in the essay, I think topic philosophy का हो सकता है, but उसके applications we have to show in like multi-dimensional approach. जैसे भी flow, अगर हम लोग time wise chronological अगर हम लोग का essay हो सकता है, जो order है कि शायद historical से शुरू करके अभी तक बता रहे हैं. एक होता है स्ट्रेटेजी ऐसे लिखने का कि मल्टी डायमेंशनल की सोशल इकोनॉमिकल पॉलिटिकल ऐसे करके सोचना.
पेस्टल अप्रोच. राइट. द पेस्टल
अप्रोच. सो ये अब टॉपिक जैसा भी हमारा ऑर्डर हो या फिर फ्लो जैसा भी हो, बट इसका डायमेंशन हर जगह दिखना चाहिए.
Absolutely.
So for philosophical essays, this is the main thing I think. Yes. Sir.
Right. Do you think the pestle approach is significant for philosophical essay, like political, economic, social, technological, all these aspects? They can also be very helpful for philosophical essay.
So definitely these are very helpful, but the main challenge comes कि हम लोग के 2 ऐसे लिखने पड़ते हैं. Like in this year's in the 2022 attempt, I remember not both the sections were absolutely philosophical. One was entirely philosophical, one was more or less philosophical, but उसमें था like I wrote that education research, what is research but a blind date with knowledge.
Right.
I wrote on that topic. So ये थोड़ा education से linked है more than philosophy.
Absolutely.
But before that, the year before that, I remember all the 8 were philosophical topics.
Yeah.
तो ये जो पेस्टल अप्रोच है हम लोग ने एक टॉपिक में तो लिख दिया, बट अगर नेक्स्ट में अगर सेम करेंगे तो मतलब मेरा पर्सनल बिलीफ है कि दैट द चेकर और द वन हु इज चेकिंग आवर पेपर्स उसको रिपीटेटिव लग सकता है कि उसको एक ही टाइप से लिखना आता है शायद से.
Right. So of course we can probably use this approach in a very subtle way, very cleverly.
Exactly.
In a way that it is not appearing that we're using a pestle approach.
Right.
But in a way the pestle approach is providing us a framework जहाँ पे हम multiple dimension थोड़ा लेके आ सकते हैं.
Exactly.
और brainstorming थोड़ी हमारी easy हो जाती है. Right. So you have successfully cracked prelims and आपका बहुत अच्छा स्कोर रहा है. Were you also sort of giving mock tests for prelims? What would you want to suggest to the aspirants who will be watching this? कि prelims को जो fear जो होता है बच्चों के माइंड में, ये कईयों के माइंड में बहुत होता है कि हम prelims निकाल लेंगे, क्रैक कर लेंगे, 100 से ऊपर नंबर ले आएंगे जैसे आपके आए हैं. आपने mock test दिए थे और कितने mock test sufficient रहते हैं?
Sir, firstly, to answer the first question, I think कि mocks तो मैंने दिए थे, yes. But major mocks that I gave were in my first attempt in 2020.
Right.
उस time पे I thought, I think I gave around 15 to 20 mocks before my first prelims.
Right.
But अब वो number सबके लिए different हो सकता है because मैं in general full 100 questions का mock ना देके आई बिलीव कि वो 5-10 क्वेश्चन दिन में कभी कर लिए, रैंडमली कुछ कोई वेबसाइट से कर लिया. आई फाउंड दैट पार्ट, मतलब अल्टीमेटली द एम वाज टू लर्न फ्यू टॉपिक्स.
राइट.
मॉक टेस्ट से यही है, बिकॉज क्वेश्चंस तो डायरेक्टली आने नहीं है.
राइट.
So the main approach or the main learning from the mock test is revising those topics or learning something new.
Right.
और जैसा भी अच्छा हो बुरा हो, I think उससे खुश भी नहीं होना चाहिए अगर अच्छा हो मॉक में.
Right.
अगर बुरा हो तो उसमें 60 भी आए मेरे बहुत बार, but end paper is very different. उससे कुछ होता नहीं है.
Right.
But I think कि कितने मॉक्स देना चाहिए उसका आंसर बहुत सब्जेक्टिव है, because that depends from person to person till the time he is confident enough. Because I think prelims में कंटेंट जो भी हो, बट उन 2 घंटों में one has to be extremely confident about what he is thinking, because 35-40 क्वेश्चन से ज्यादा एग्जैक्टली किसी को आते नहीं है, चाहे पेपर का फॉर्मेट कैसा भी कर ले. So we have to like develop those gut feelings or instincts, which is very difficult to explain कि कैसे आता है या फिर कैसे होता है.
Right.
But I think that part कि ये लग रहा है मुझको शायद से ये हो सकता है. I do believe कि ये तो नहीं होगा. ये वाला पार्ट आने के लिए, इस कॉन्फिडेंस को आने के लिए, आई थिंक जब तक नहीं आ रहा है तब तक वन कैन अटेम्प्ट एज मेनी मॉक टेस्ट एज ही और शी लाइक्स.
राइट. बट मॉक टेस्ट करने चाहिए. इट्स वेरी इंपॉर्टेंट टू गिव मॉक टेस्ट टू ओवरकम.
डेफिनेटली.
Any extracurricular activity you had, because it's a long process, 3-4 you have to
Yes, sir.
3.5-4 years for this stage to come. How did you sort of motivated yourself? It's very difficult to stay on very motivated, specifically if you're not working also, if you left your job. So what were your sort of passions and hobbies, and how did you distract yourself?
So my main hobby right from my childhood has been singing. So I learned classical music when I was in school. So I learned classical music for around 6 years in my school time. I used to perform in my college as well and play guitar along with that.
Nice.
So I have an Instagram channel that has more than 3 lakh views of my songs. So I
awesome.
continuously uploaded them on my Instagram page. So वही मतलब music was my source of meditation, my source of channelizing energy, negative energy to something positive.
Right.
So everything, it was my music.
What was the name of your page? So I'll also follow that.
It's Udayan Subuddhi. It's
Okay,
Udayan_Subuddhi.
Okay,
Yes,
perfect.
sir.
So anybody watching the video and anybody who's a music lover, so definitely do follow Udayan's channels as well. And apart from that, fond of OTT, fond of watching movies or Netflix series, etc.
Yes, sir. I have binge watched many series during the last 4 years, because वो कभी कभार होता है कि 2-3 दिन जब पढ़ाई नहीं होती तो वो बीच में there comes phase in every aspirant's life or in this preparation phase कि मतलब वो भी एक मतलब पार्ट है कि कुछ एंजॉयमेंट के लिए कुछ उसके लिए कर लिया. So I have watched many series in the last 4 years, 3.5 years.
Right.
I think वो positivity that had been there in my mind for my preparation, that came from my friends and family.
Right.
So they were very important, because there were many times when I thought कि यार फिर से चले जाते हैं corporate में कर लेते. After 2 attempts I thought कि many of my friends are going for higher studies abroad.
Right.
So I should also pursue that.
Right.
These kind of thoughts came across many a times.
Right.
But I think there were few friends and my family especially.
Right.
So they always encouraged me and motivated me कि यार नहीं होगा कर. So these kind of words always motivated me.
Right. So what would you actually convey to the aspirants watching the video? That what would be your message in terms of if they have any kind of distraction, because aspirants के पास बहुत सारे doubts होते हैं. कई बार aspirants self doubt में चले जाते हैं. Anxiety, stress, ये बहुत common हो चुका है. So what would be your piece of advice? Because of course everybody would have a different capacity to deal with stress. But what would be your piece of advice?
So the first thing that I feel that aspirants face is that if we waste like 1 day or 2, जो कि होता है बीच में कभी कभार, उससे हम लोग का 3rd day भी वेस्ट होता है in the guilt that we have wasted 2 days. So I think उस फीलिंग को सबसे पहले हटाना जरूरी है कि जब जागो तभी सवेरा. The day when you decide to start reading again, you start from that day itself and forget what has happened in the past. Even if you have left like 30 days of newspaper, बीच में अगर ऐसा हुआ है कभी कि छूट गया 1 महीने का न्यूज़पेपर, होता है कभी कभार, it's a long process. So, but don't get bothered by that. And the day when you realize that now I have to study, start studying from that out, realizing what has happened in the past.
Right.
Apart from that, I think वो end तक लगे रहना. We have to fight till the end without any expectations, because it was this attempt where I had 0 expectations.
Right.
And I in my previous attempts I thought I may clear mains, I may get the chance to sit for the interview.
Right.
But in this attempt, even despite getting a call for the interview, I believed mains में मेरा इतना खराब हुआ होगा कि बस it's a formality. Interview is just a formality for me, I thought.
Right.
तो वो पता नहीं चलता. I even told my parents that नहीं होगा, कोई इसमें सोचने की बात नहीं, अगले साल लेकिन पक्का करेंगे. I told my parents कि इस साल again I have cleared the forest and both,
Right.
so इस साल definitely I would clear. But इस बार नहीं हो पाएगा वैसा मुझे लग रहा है.
Right.
So I think fighting till the end, not losing hope,
Right.
and not thinking about the results, because it's a long process and
Right.
it requires luck. At many times, at many points of time, it requires luck.
Luck.
So hard work is important, yes, but definitely there is an
Luck
element
also
of
is.
luck, which yes, definitely.
Luck plays a role. And you seem to be very sorted out. You seem to be very, calm, composed and sorted out. You seem to be very aware of what you're wanting in life, because many youngsters of your age, they don't know what they want. So I believe that's probably because of the atmosphere at home, because your parents have been very encouraging. As you said, your father is also a civil servant. So therefore, that's why, that really helps in sort of creating that state of mind whereby
Yes,
you're
sir.
self-motivated every time. How significant is newspaper reading? And do you believe that reading newspaper is any day better than being only dependent upon the monthly magazines?
Sir, I think there are two parts of it. When we start our preparation, I do feel that newspapers are more important than the monthly magazines, because it gives you the overall picture of various topics and events happening in the country and across the world. So in the initial phase, like for the first year, I do feel more than monthly magazine, one should focus on reading newspapers. But as we come into the groove of current affairs after a year, I think themes and topics become repetitive. आज UN की बात हो रही, next year फिर से newspaper में आएगी same बात.
Right.
So after 1.5 year, I think newspapers में सिर्फ editorial part, सिर्फ selective study कर लिया कभी-कभी, and then we can rely on monthly magazine. But in the initial phases of our preparation, I think newspapers are a must, because even I, for the first year, made notes out of newspapers.
Right.
So
physical notes or digital notes? I mean, handwritten
physical notes. So there are mixed, but I initially started with physical notes, and after 3.5 years, I am completely onto e-notes.
Digital notes. I get that. We from CP classes wish you all the very, very best in your future endeavors. And we wish you lots of success, even this time around in the UPSC mains. And we look forward again to talk again next year, once you're done with the mains and interview. And wish you all the very best. Wish you all the very, very best.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Great. Thank you so much.